Hello everyone. Hope you all are fine at your home. Let us move to today's topic. That is, again, I'll begin with the same topic, the portrait of a lady, written by Kushwant Singh. I hope you all remember in the first video we were talking about the story, the portrait of a lady, written by Kushwant Singh, how the relation was there in between both the character, both the protagonist. And I gave you a homework to write a page or few lines about your grandma. So I hope you have already done with it, with lots of exciting words, exciting sentences, and an emotional attachment can be seen in that particular line what you have written. So let us begin today's topic in brief. Before that, I request all of you to open your book and see the first page. Today we are going to read line wise in brief. So as you can see on your screen, the first word, wrinkle, portrait, mental peace, revolting, absurd, undignified, fables, prophets. These are all glossary to the first paragraph, which begins as my grandmother, like everybody's grandmother, was an old woman. So in this first paragraph, my grandmother to tell us the last line of the first paragraph. In this paragraph, you will come across these glossary which is seen here on your screen, right? So I'll tell you the meaning of the first paragraph in brief. Before that, you need to read that particular paragraph. The first paragraph, like my grandmother, like everybody's grandmother, was an old woman. She had been old and wrinkled for the 20 years that I had known her. Again, the word came, wrinkle. That means having lines or folds on faces, right? So here in this first paragraph, you can see all the glossary item which is shown on your screen. Now let us begin that what exactly this first paragraph is telling us all about. So here the author talks about his grandmother and he had known her for the past 20 years. And she had always been old and wrinkled. He was told that she was once young and pretty and had a husband, obviously. His grandfather's portrait hung on the wall, in which he wore loose fitted cloths, a turban, and had long white colored beard that reached his chest. That means, see, the entire lines tell you that grandmother was once young, definitely at the young age, and she had a husband, but he is no more right now. And the portrait of the husband or the grandfather is hung on the wall, where you can see the grandfather is wearing white cloth with a turban on the head with long beard which is already white in color. So there is, I don't think so, there is more briefing in it. I hope the entire sentence, the entire paragraph is clear in front of you that the author is trying to talk about the young age and trying to describe about the portrait of grandma and her husband, right? So I hope this concept is clear to you. Now you can see from the particular first paragraph, you can find all the glossary item which is written on the screen. You can see that and you can read out the first paragraph. Now let us move to the second paragraph. Now second paragraph is that she had always been short and fat and slightly bent. So you can see your book in the first paragraph till contentment. Let me explain that second paragraph. The author is trying to say that he also appeared very old, and the author thought that he was someone who could have many grandchildren but not a wife or children. The author could never imagine that once his grandmother was young and pretty. He could not connect to this idea. So she used to tell him and his cousins about her childhood memories. So the grandma is trying to share his cousins about the childhood memories. About what? Now, the grandma is sharing all the childhood memories of her to the cousins, right? About what? Like the games she used to play as a child, and they were fond of stories, illogical and disrespectful, because it was beyond their imagination to think that grandmother was once a child and played such games. Sometimes, what happened when we listen to our parents or grandmother or grandparents, we sometimes feel that is it true that they were also a child once upon a time? Yes, we come across such situation in our day-to-day life. Sometimes it's unimaginable that the person who is sitting in front of us was also a child. If we don't talk about grandmother, if we keep them apart, think about your parents, think about mother and father. Do you think that suddenly they become so grown up and they are parents? No, as we were a child at certain period of time, similarly our parents were also children and they also had their childhood memories. Similarly, here this author is not able to believe that the grandma was also a child at her young age, and she had lot of memories which she is trying to share. And they were fond, and as I told you that they were fond of the stories and all, so it was beyond their imagination to think that grandmother was once a child and played such games. They thought that her life's stories were like the other moral stories which she used to tell them, right? Now let us move to the next paragraph. Now let us move to the next paragraph. You can see again the glossary item, right? From Krish to contentment. You can have a look before reading any of the paragraph. It will be more easier for you to understand that particular paragraph which you are going to read. So here the entire glossary is related to all this paragraph of second and third. Now let us move to the paragraph and see what it is next. You can see my grandmother, paragraph number third, two village dogs. Here the author is saying that his grandmother was short, fat, slightly bent in posture, and her face had lots of wrinkles. So definitely it's a portrait of an old age where the author is trying to say that his grandmother was short height, fat, slightly bent in posture, and her face was lot of wrinkles. Now, she seemed so old and she had been the same for the past 20 years. That means she looked same for 20 years. And according to the author, she was beautiful but not pretty. She walked around the house in an awkward way, wearing spotless white cloths with beads of rosary hanging from one hand, and the other hand rested on her back for support. That means she is holding the back with one hand and the other hand is busy in the rosary beads, chanting Almighty's name, and she used to walk around in an awkward way. She had silver color hair which was not neatly combed and was disorganized. That means the hair was not in an organized way, it will be scattered, right? And she was constantly chanting prayers. He compares her to the winter landscape in the mountains, which has a peaceful and calm feeling, and she was live example of a pure white peace emitting entity. So here the writer is trying to explain the character sketch, that how the grandma looked and how she used to stand, what was the way of her posture and all. Again, you can see, my dear student, there are few glossary above, and then the paragraph begins, and this paragraph is all about when my parents were comfortably till that. So here the author is trying to say that the author lived with her in village and they were good friends. His parents left him with her to settle in the city, and the author's grandmother used to wake him up every morning and get him ready for the school. She would recite her morning prayers while she bathed and dressed him up, and he loved her voice but would not try to memorize a word of what she spoke. So here the author is trying to say that early morning, what was the routine, what was the schedule, how he was being brought up by the grandma, and what was the schedule, how she woke up early and how she helped him to dress up. Here the author is trying to share his own memories, how grandma took care of him before going to school. So how she make him ready for the school, and even when she take bath, she used to recite the name of God. But my dear student, this child, this author could not remember a single word, right? So here what happened, she would make his things ready like a wooden slate, a tiny earthen ink pot, and a red pen. So these are the stuff that she used to prepare and give it to author, and he used to go to the school by taking all this stuff. He would eat a thick stale chapati with butter and sugar spread on it. And they both used to walk to the school, and his grandmother carried stale chapatis with her to feed the village dog. So what happened? They both take breakfast, and that to be stale chapati, that means not fresh chapati, and over it with butter and sugar were spread to it, and they were having breakfast. And few of the chapati, not the fresh one, few of chapati grandma used to hold it and feed the stray dog or the street dogs, right? As I told you in the first video, she was a animal lover, and she fed whom? Birds, dogs and all, right? Now let us move to the next paragraph. Here you can see, when my parents, I have already told you. Now moving to the next paragraph, that is, when I went up to the university, I was given a room of my own till day for her. Now again you can see here the glossary. Here the paragraph says, his grandmother would accompany him to the school, as the temple was attached to the school, and she used to visit the temple daily. On one side, he would sit on the veranda with other children, would sing the alphabet and prayers in the chorus. On the other hand, she would sit in the temple to read the scriptures, and after finishing, they would walk back home together. So see how sweet it is. Grandma used to visit the temple every day till the school is over, and they come back together to home. The village dogs met them at the village door, and they would follow them to their home, growing and fighting with each other for the stale chapatis that she fed them. So as I told you, that grandma used to hold stale chapati to feed the whom? Stray dogs, right? And when his parents got settled in the city, they called them, and that was the turning point of his friendship with his grandmother. So what happened? When the author's parents were set up in the city, they called him, right? And that was the turning point when he have to leave the grandma in the village and move to that particular place. So his parents got settled in the city, and they called them. That means they both are called right now to the city. And that was the turning point of his friendship with his grandmother. And they shared the same room, but she no longer would give him company to his school. And he started going to an English medium school, and a motor bus would come to pick and drop him. And there were no dogs in the streets whom she could feed as she did in the village. So she started feeding sparrows in the veranda of their house. So my dear student, does this city life and village life is as same? No, it's not same. It's totally different. Here in the village, she used to go and escort whom? Author. But here a bus is coming to pick him up to the school, right? And there is no stray dogs at all. As the year passed in the city, their interaction reduced. For some time, she continued to wake him up and would get him ready for school. She would ask him what he had learned in school that day, and the scientific terminology and English words made her unhappy. So the same thing went on for a few days, but does it exist for a long time? No. She tried, but not for not for long duration, right? And she was not happy, she was unhappy. Why? Just because of the register language of that particular school, scientific terminology, right? And she did not know the language, she could not help him with the lessons. And as his new school never taught him about God and religious scriptures, these made her sad. She did not approve of such an education, and when she came to know that he was getting music lessons, it disturbed her. And according to her, music was indecent and it was an art for the beggars and prostitutes, and not for those belongings to decent families. She did not like that, and he learned music, so she stopped talking to him. See the grandma. See the we can say it a stereotype thought. She is thinking that the village school education will be same as the city education, but it's quite different. She cannot understand the English terminology or the register language, and she's not happy because the school is not teaching the stories, we can say, about God. Instead that there are a lot of activities and music lesson which makes her feel unhappy, and in that way there was a long gap formation between grandchild and grandmother. And in that way she stopped as well talking to author, just because of this teachings in the school, because she is not able to convey things, right? Now let us move to the next slide. You can see here again there is few glossary. You can find it out while reading your paragraph. Now moving to the next paragraph, when I decided to go abroad. So here again there are lots and lots of what? Glossary. So my dear students, whenever you are going to read any of the paragraph, just refer to a dictionary, because in that case you will build up more and more vocabs. And if you avoid this glossary, then it will be very difficult for you to understand a particular paragraph, whatever you are reading. So whenever you are reading something, just see this glossary, refer to this glossary, and then only you will enjoy that particular paragraph, and that particular paragraph will be in your mind forever. Now let us move to the next paragraph. Here you can see, as the author, here in the book, you can see the paragraph, when I decided to go abroad, till between us. So here the author is trying to say that when he went to the university, he had a room of his own. Definitely we all have a room whenever we go for a higher education, right? Now, the common link of his friendship with his grandmother that they had when they shared the same room was changed now, and thus his friendship with her ended. So during childhood, this author and grandma used to share a single room, but now the relationship has changed. It has come up to an end. And she became more private and spent her whole day spinning wheel from sunrise to sunset, and she would sit and silently recite her prayers. And in the afternoon, she used to feed sparrows in the veranda. So the entire day she used to spend her own time on that spinning wheel, okay, and she become private. That means she was confined to herself, and in order to spare the time, she used to recite the prayer, or else she used to feed the sparrows sitting in the veranda, breaking the bread into small pieces, and she would feed hundreds of birds, and the birds would gather around her. Some sat near her, some on her legs. Just imagine, isn't it so beautiful? If you think for a while, close your eyes and just think. There are hundreds of birds and you are feeding them. Some are sitting near you, some are sitting on your legs, some are sitting on your shoulders, on head, and she never them, but always smiled. She was the happiest in that half an hour during the whole day. See, time has changed, my dear students. Our grandparents, when they become old, they always sick, or they want the company of their grandchildren, or they always want that someone should sit near them and talk to them so that they will be happy. But when there is no one, when there is a long detachment, then they search how to spare time. And see this old lady, she's busy for the entire day feeding the sparrows. Isn't it so lovely? My dear student, please spare some time with your grandparents. Enjoy their company. Tell them the entire schedule of yours to them. Share something. Listen to them. And really they'll feel very happy, and even you will also enjoy their company. Never ever avoid them. Now let us move to the next paragraph. When the author decided to go abroad for further studies, he believed it would be the last time he would see her, as he would be gone for 5 long years. And as they all reached the station, she held him tightly and kissed his forehead. So sweet. He thought it was the last physical contact with her, and the wet impression of her hand was dear to him. She was so sentimental at all, and when he came back after 5 years, she came to meet him at the station. So, my dear student, isn't it that so emotional? Whenever we are going for a higher education, definitely our parents go with us to the station, and when we board the train or board the flight, that particular moment is so emotional. Everyone shed tears, and here Granny, she kissed on his forehead. And after 5 years, when he came back, she never missed that particular moment. The wet impression of her hand was dear to him, and she was not sentimental at all. When he came back after 5 years, she came to meet him at the station. She looked just the way she did 5 years ago. So when the author came back after 5 years, she came to receive the author, and she was looking the same as she was before 5 years, and not a day older, and she held him again in her arms and was still reciting her prayers. Oh my God. Seriously, even our grandparents, they used to chant the name of the Almighty, and the same thing, she embraced her tightly, and he could hear the reciting of the prayer, right? Now, an evening, she did not follow her regular routine of praying, and she collected a few women from the neighborhood, got a drum, and started singing with them. She thumped the ruined part of the drum and sang alone. So one evening, what happened? She called few of the neighbor, and they were sitting together, and she started singing, and suddenly she sang alone, and the whole family persuaded her to stop, as she might get ill due to the exhaustion. So during this old age, if you try to give more pressure to your body, then definitely there will be uncomfortable. So the entire family is trying to stop her, because it's not that proper time to support her body, because she will be uncomfortable, it will be uneasy for her. But she was going on singing and singing. So the whole family persuaded her to stop, as she might get ill due to exhaustion, and the next morning she fell ill, and it was a mild fever. So the doctors told them that it would go away, but she took it differently. According to her, she would die soon, as her end was near, and she started chanting prayers, and she did not want to waste her last hours in talking to anyone. See this old lady. See the thoughts coming out inside her mind. She's thinking that it is end of her journey in life, and she doesn't want to spare a single moment without chanting the name of the god, and she's trying to say herself that I should chant until and unless my lips stop. And she's trying to chant and chant and chant, and she's sitting there. She's chanting the name of the Lord, right? Now, the family protested, tried to stop her, but she lay peacefully on her bed, chanting prayers and doing her beads. Suddenly, she stopped and the rosary fell from her lifeless fingers. A calm, pale appearance spread on her face, and she was dead. So the life has ended here. Now she is no more in this world. And the family lifted her from the bed, laid her on the ground, and wrapped her with a red colored cloth. Thousands of sparrows sat silently near her, and the author's mother fetched some bread for the birds, but they didn't eat any. They flew away later as the family carried the dead body. The sweeper removed the crumbs the next morning, and the birds were so sensitive. They did not want to eat bread, but were mourning the death of the one who had fed them for so many days. See the attachment, my dear student. Even though the birds, animals, they do not have words to convey their feelings, but still the way they behave, we can easily know that yes, they are mourning for a person who used to feed them. I hope the story has touched your heart, my dear student. I hope you loved the story. I hope the concept is clear in front of you. And I hope my dear students will definitely read the entire paragraph thoroughly. And if you face any doubt, you can call me anytime. My dear student, try to read. Have a habit of reading books every day, whatever it may be. So till then, have a nice day. Thank you all. Stay safe.